Bethesda, the only company that expects its fans to complete their games for them. Case in point, this game on PC.
Though I didn't play this game until well after all of the major patches were released that addressed the complaints players had, and I didn't play this on PC, I'll give you this one. Once in, removed.
This game just started and I've already encountered the most terrifying enemy. Cinematic letterbox. Keep that nonsense out of my video games, please. And while I'm making demands, no more lens flare, motion blur, or depth of field. If you want to make a movie, make a movie. I'm off to NeoGAF now to see if someone's patched this letterbox nonsense.
Ugh, I already regret giving you a sin off. The cinematic letterbox I know were a source of complaints from players, but you just had to take it too far. Are you unaware of the production value and process that goes into making video games these days? Making a video game nowadays, even back in 2010, was equivalent to making a movie. Certain cinematic elements seen in movies can enhance the gaming experience and thus show up in video games.
If I was behind the wheel of that cop car, I wouldn't even bother using the sirens. There's no one else driving on the road in this city to even get in your way.
That's a pretty dumbass statement I should expect from you. I'll use your ridiculous reason in this sin and flip it on its head. A reason police vehicles use sirens when responding to emergencies is because police rush to the scene of a possible emergency. Those loud sirens are to alert everyone of a fast-moving vehicle. This includes drivers who might suddenly pull out onto the road or pedestrians crossing the street. It's a standard police procedure that I learned about by using Google, which I know is too much work for you.
3 police detectives being chauffeured in a police cruiser. I've watched way too much Law & Order for this to not be a sin.
So 3 police detectives being driven in a police vehicle by a patrolman is a sin. For some reason.
Discount Markiplier.
Dartigan makes a YouTuber reference that isn't a sin of this game.
Is there any... God damn it!
This being a Shinji Mikami game, it's given some screwed up stuff is going down at the asylum. What I want to know is why the radio broadcast coming from a dispatcher at the police station is affected by it. Does just talking about it invite evil to come and assert itself by giving headaches to some totally random and unimportant people?
The reference to Shinji Mikami is pretty pointless, as he's worked on other games of different genres besides survival horror. Did you not see the box art for this game? You expect box art like this to imply the game is going to be a G-rated romp at a carnival? And to answer your question, this high-pitched sound we and the characters hear is an indicator that something is extremely wrong with the setting. We of course learn that the world the characters are inhabiting is like a screwed up version of the Matrix.
Greetings and salutations, viewer. I am the Sin Counter.
Ugh, SC, what are you doing here?
You did mention the Matrix, did you not, Omega?
Yes, I did. This is the evil within I'm talking about here. The STEM system featured in this game is very similar to the Matrix, but what does that have to do with you?
It is impossible to speak on this preferred subject without my presence, human.
Yeah, you're right. Ever since you removed a sin back during the Everything Wrong with Resident Evil 5 Remastered Edition for a Matrix-related joke, and you coming to an agreement with me during my Spider-Man video, I should always keep in mind that the Matrix is a favorite for you.
Precisely. Therefore, I intend to assist you in explaining some of the STEM-related sins that Dartigan completely misunderstands.
God damn it, SC. You know, I don't really like when you try and take the mic from me on my own show.
Are you certain you would like to contest that?
The only reason I'm giving in this time is because I don't want to fill my runtime with any unnecessary padding that takes away from the video. Like having us going back and forth and disagreeing constantly instead of us just getting on with the show. Okay, whatever. Moving forward.
Even though it's raining in this scene, that still doesn't explain why there are no people on the sidewalks or anywhere else for that matter. It's 2014. You can't set a game in a city and expect us not to notice this or buy any bullshit excuses to why the city is empty.
Yes, you can set a game in a city in modern times and buy the explanation why the city is empty. Just because you 1. Don't pay attention, which is almost always the case. 2. You don't care to understand the reason the game details even subtly, which honestly invalidates your opinion. Or 3. You again rushed through a game to crap out a video in order to trend surf. It's one of, or a combination of those 3 points. Anyway, this opening sequence is a retelling of what actually happens before the true starting point from Sebastian's perspective. All of this is shown for the benefit of the audience and as an introduction of the characters ultimately involved. Notice how at the end, after Detective Castellanos awakens, there's suddenly a SWAT team and police outside Beacon Mental Hospital.
Junior Detective Kidman.
If this isn't her first day on the job, referring to her as Junior Detective Kidman is a really awkward way to address someone.
How exactly? This isn't Julie's first day on the job. However, Detective Castellanos' way of addressing her this way is for the benefit of the audience to introduce her character.
Shinji thinks by setting the opening scene in a city rather than a forest, we won't notice that he just recycled the opening to Resident Evil. It's still 3 police officers, 2 male, 1 female, arriving at a creepy mansion where all the previous police officers who arrived first were brutally killed.
Now this scene illustrates some things I like and dislike about your videos, Dartigan. Yes, those are interesting parallels to draw and make comparisons to that are valid. However, the differences outweigh the similarities. For starters, the opening in Resident Evil involved more than 3 officers regardless of which character is chosen to play the game. You have Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, Albert Wesker, Joseph Frost, and Brad Vickers. The 6 officers whom I mentioned collectively made up Alpha Team were specifically investigating the disappearance of the team before them, which was Bravo Team. The Arclay facility was in the area, but Alpha Team were investigating the last known coordinates of Bravo Team before being forced to find shelter in it due to an unexpected attack by BOWs known as Cerberus. Back to the evil within, the 3 detectives were not called to investigate this crime scene. In fact, this scene proves it.
Sorry, detectives. I know you're just coming off a case, but I'm afraid we're gonna have to make a detour.
Sounds serious. Is it a riot?
A call went out just before I picked you up. Said it was multiple homicides. Half a dozen units already on scene.
131, please.
It's only when the detectives arrive at the asylum do they begin to realize what transpired beforehand.
We're gonna check it out. Don't let anyone else through this door.
Sexism.
The more experienced Detective Castellanos assigns the junior Detective Kidman for backup due to her assumed lesser experience and due to the nature of what they're encountering. I mean, with them not even knowing if this crime scene was secured. Kidman being a woman is immaterial, so quit trying to virtue signal here.
Evil listens to classical music cliche.
Okay, is that a bad thing? It really drives home a feeling of unsettlement when you hear classic music like this while being in an environment where corpses are being butchered.
1 empty wheelchair in asylum? That's creepy. 5 empty wheelchairs though. Well, that must be even more creepy.
How's that a sin exactly? You are aware this is an asylum with multiple patients committed here, right? Do you hear what I'm saying?
1 elevator ride later and Sebastian's sliced open calf muscle is healed enough to allow him to sprint again. Just as a reminder, this was him 10 seconds ago.
I'd almost give you this point had it not been for the elevator ride. Detective Castellanos closes his eyes before it transitions to a proper title opening. This implies that some time passes to allow him to recover just enough to be able to sprint again. Besides, implausibility aside, are you telling me that you or the majority of players would enjoy playing this game with this limp? I'll let Jules answer that question for me like he's done before.
Get the fuck out my face with that shit.
Hey, where's Joseph? Man, I'm sorry, but you never came out. I waited, but...
No, you didn't wait. You showed up in an ambulance just as Sebastian got outside, then you floored it out of there. And since Kidman, the doctor guy, and his patient all had to come out of the asylum before Sebastian, that means the amount of time you waited for anyone after that is approximately 0. Hell, in the end, you didn't even wait for Sebastian. You had the drive back after picking up the others.
Officer Connolly didn't say he waited. See, if you play these scenes with subtitles on, or, do proper research, you would have seen this.
Where's Joseph? Man, I'm sorry, but you never came out. I'd waited, but...
Also, this bad writing here is getting 5 extra sins.
I think we can all agree that any scene where people are racing what could be described as a biblical disaster in a vehicle and winning deserves 3 sins automatically.
Well, you thought wrong, because I don't see the problem with driving really fast to escape a city-breaking earthquake. And since you want to pad your sin counter for no reason, it's only just that I do the same.
I get the feeling that the idea for this game sprang from the sentence, "What if Shinji Mikami directed Inception?" And I'm pretty sure it was Shinji Mikami who asked it in third person.
Say that was the case, and Shinji Mikami literally did just that. Now how the hell does that irrelevant idea you puked up represent a negative about this game and what happens in it?
So those guys are dead now, right? A full speed nosedive off a cliff usually does that.
Obviously they're not dead because we see them all alive at various points after the crash. We don't see how they crashed, so you can come up with believable possibilities on how they survived.
It was broad daylight when they crashed, now it's night, and it can be reasonably assumed that the ambulance has been burning since at least the crash. Even with a conservative estimate, Sebastian has been unconscious in a burning ambulance for at least 1 to 2 hours.
I'd like to point out to anyone who had some difficulty understanding the story that Ruvik, the main antagonist of the main campaign, is basically in control of the world these characters are in. This includes manipulating reality on a pretty big scale. Now, back to the sin. How exactly do you know how long the ambulance has been burning? We don't see what transpires in between the ambulance crashing and the detective regaining consciousness.
Yes, Shinji, you made Resident Evil. Now can you stop winking at us?
Yes, Dartigan. Sinning the director of this game for referencing one of his best games ever in a genre that only became mainstream because of that said game.
My anemic cousin can sprint longer than 3 seconds before getting winded. What's Sebastian's excuse?
Detective Castellanos is a smoker. That's a good cause that contributes to this. It adds tension to gameplay as well.
Have a look for yourself. Those things.
Do doctors normally keep binoculars on them just in case of emergency survival situations?
So it just didn't occur to you that he could have found them somewhere before he meets the detective?
Tape rails instead of, MP3 players or smartphones. Never let it be said that Shinji won't sacrifice believability for doing something he thinks adds style to his work.
Dude, this has nothing to do with believability. What you fail to realize is that this game takes place almost entirely inside of a world made up of collective memories and consciousnesses, with Ruvik able to manipulate everything in it. These environments and objects in them play off of those said memories. They also add to the out of touch with modern society theme that you can find often with psychological horror. Have you not played other survival horror games or seen psychological horror movies?
Great. There's gotta be something that'll get through this. Maybe a chainsaw or something.
Chainsaws are not meant for cutting iron chains, even though they're called chainsaws. Huh. Never really thought of that bit of irony.
No further comments on this one.
One sin for throwing away a chainsaw in a zombie situation.
I get the criticism for not being able to keep the chainsaw, but there's plenty of reasons why I believe discarding it was a better idea. I won't go into detail here because that will definitely take too long, though if anyone's interested, I'll leave a pinned comment on this video to express it. If you want to experience what could have been though, that's what the Executioner DLC is for.
Man, diabetes has been hell for Wilford Brimley these past few years.
Even if the man accepted the internet fame for how he pronounced diabetes with good humor, that doesn't make this low blow any less than bad taste, so f this sin.
Losing our minds, losing our minds, losing our minds.
Hey, I can repeat audio tracks rather than record additional lines too. Hey, I can repeat audio tracks rather than record additional lines too. Hey, I can repeat audio tracks.
This is a trait of this character, repeating the same thing multiple times. Even if they only recorded one take and simply reused it to achieve the desired effect, is that impossible to do in real life? Is that impossible to do in real life? You've never repeated a sentence and it sounded identical to the one before it? You've never repeated a sentence and it sounded identical to the one before it?
Ruvik.
Evil wears a hood cliche.
Ruvik is a burn victim and he has extensive scars all over his entire body. You don't think it makes sense he covers up in any capacity? Besides, it's not only antagonists in video games who have been designed to wear hoods.
By now, looping hallways have become so common in games they deserve their own sin.
Sure, a looping hallway to give a sense of disorientation and an idea that all is not what it seems in a psychological horror video game all happening in the world under the control of a psychopath is a sin.
I'm not dinging this because it's a scene straight from The Shining, I'm dinging it because that's a river of blood, into a pool of blood, on top of the chute of blood Sebastian slid down earlier into another pool of blood. The only people who find this game scary are hemophiliacs.
Hemophobiacs are people who are afraid of blood, not hemophiliacs. Google, man, it's my friend, but it can be yours too.
My head feels like... Do you hear that?
That's the exact same thing I say whenever I try to watch a Markiplier Let's Play.
So, your disorientation when watching something unrelated to this game is something wrong with this game. Dartigan, ladies and gentlemen.
This looks pretty sophisticated. Why would they put a bomb like this?
To hide loading times and activate horde mode later on.
And that's a bad thing? Would you rather have a plain and empty loading screen, or a scene like this that has a bit of characterization on the surface, while behind the scenes taking care of the technical duties that most players don't care about?
Wait a minute. It's another trap.
Well, not so much a trap as a bunch of guys waiting around in plain sight for you.
That doesn't mean this doesn't qualify as a trap. And some of the haunted attack from the level above you while you're fighting those that are on the same level as you. I wouldn't call that waiting in plain sight.
It's got the same kind of dials, right?
Yeah, a top one and a bottom one.
Set the upper dial to 22 and the lower dial to 5.
I'm not sure if it's a racist stereotype that Jonathan can somehow figure out 2 combination locks in the course of a few seconds, but it's an Asian character who's working with numbers, so I have to go with my gut on this one.
Okay, 2 things here. 1, you called Joseph Jonathan all of a sudden despite you getting it correct before, and that blatant mistake is getting you 5 sins. 2, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. You think this game is using a racist stereotype when it isn't, and then you use that said racist stereotype.
Stop! Stop!
Also, why do you need 2 dials for a combination lock?
Dude, multiple combination locks have existed for years. Why the f*** is this a f***ing sin?
And that's why you never mine straight down in Minecraft.
Dartigan makes a video game reference that isn't a sin of this game cliche.
Everyone, hold on a minute while Jonathan checks his notebook for a way to get past this door he's never encountered before.
Again?
Add a hallway of blood to the list of hemoglobin cliches this game is already racked up.
For fuck's sake, it's hemophobia, and the term you mean is hemophobic.
I speak for everyone who's ever played this game when I say, fuck this boss fight.
You sure as hell don't speak for me. Sure, Laura's instant kill grab was annoying, but this boss fight was awesome since it makes use of the environment and the boss's fear and weakness to fire to subdue her. So nah, fuck this sin too.
Next thing I knew, I was here. I must have blacked out or...
He's fine. He's just been teleported by Shinji's plot again. It's apparently just as jarring for the characters as the people playing it.
That's not a sin of this game. There are more than one enemies in this game capable of teleportation, and this includes teleporting others. It's established.
Get that thing open!
I'm working on it. Just give me a little time.
Last time it took you around 15 seconds to defuse a bomb door. Obvious horde mode trigger is obvious.
Some bombs can take longer than others to defuse. How do you come up with these weak-ass sins and not think of these possible retorts? Seriously, man, this video really scrapes the bottom of the barrel.
This architecture seems straight out of the Middle Ages.
Yeah, but there's electricity.
So it's just like every JRPG ever.
Dartigan, I guess, has never played early Final Fantasy games or even the Legend of Zelda games. Oh, and it's real convenient for your vid that you cut this part out, which helps explain things.
Where do you suppose we are?
More like when? This architecture seems straight out of the Middle Ages.
Yeah, but there's electricity. Elevators. This place can't be real.
It's like jumbled up memories. Is this what it was like, Seb? After the accident?
Well, I never put a gun to my head.
No, of course not. Just quietly sank into a bottle.
We're halfway through this game, so now it's time to reveal Sebastian's backstory. He lost his child and turned to drinking. If you didn't pay attention or skip this scene, don't worry. It will never be relevant to anything, including Sebastian.
How the hell is this scene not relevant? This scene highlights some of the friendship between Joseph and Sebastian, and it gives insight into Sebastian's character to humanize him and make him relatable. It may not affect the overall conflict the characters are trying to overcome, but scenes like this are important to flesh out the characters. This is integral to good stories.
We don't have time for this.
That's exactly what Shinji says to anyone that suggests they develop their characters in a meaningful way.
Actually, we did get some characterization in the scene I just covered. You're just trying real hard to manipulate this scene. This is why Detective Castellanos says we don't have time for this.
Shit. Let's hide out in here for a minute.
Wait, there was something about a horse in that house back there. Let me see what I wrote.
Apparently, Jonathan gained access to the Evil Within wiki when he spent 10 seconds looking at a wall of papers a few scenes back.
This motherfucker is serious, isn't he?
What is it?
I dropped my glasses back there.
Fuck.
Fuck.
So are you gonna explain why you're giving this a sin? No, huh? Okay then.
It's not just about being unable to see. It's about feeling normal.
It's about padding the game.
That's rich. Coming from you who pads the runtime of this video with frivolous shit like this?
If Ruvik has the power to do pretty much anything he wants here, why doesn't he just kill Sebastian and be done with it? He was just a guy in the wrong place at the wrong time. There is literally no reason to keep toying with him.
I was waiting for you to get to this. Yes, Ruvik does have the ability to kill the detective easily. But from how the story plays out, as well as cutscenes, notes, and flashbacks in the game, it turns out Ruvik is a pretty screwed up person. He enjoys torturing, taunting, and tormenting those that come into contact with him, and he does this throughout the game.
Aberrant brainwave patterns observed in subjects number 25 and 33, and now again in 55. The one common factor is a case history of dissociative identity disorder. Previous experiments on the prefrontal cortex led to degradation of sense of self, but there were unanticipated results here. Suicidal thoughts of alternate personalities exhibited as attacks on the core personality. As self-consciousness waned, a sort of stasis was achieved. Like two creatures sewn together and forced to live as one, eternally hating the other. Delicious. Oh, Father. If you only knew how satisfying that look on your face is. Did you actually think if you locked me away, I would just cease to exist? Out of sight, out of mind. You did. You did. Didn't you? Oh, you were never out of my mind. I hope you're proud of yourselves. Subject number 14. Test 88C. Limbic priming. Temp 3. Electrode placement C4. Stimulation of the cingulate cortex. Hope Center. Assailing the Hope axis improves domination of the subject's will, but domination information isn't enough. Who do you think you are? I know who you are. Seb. I know what you crave, what you fear. Will you be able to live with yourself knowing what I'm gonna make you do? Poor little Joseph couldn't. Too bad they dragged you into this. But either way, you're mine. To do with as I please.
Killing Detective Castellanos isn't at the top of his goals. His primary goal is to actually escape STEM.
I took a sin off the last time you used that trick, but I'll be damned if I'm going to do it again the second time.
Dartigan sins something he likes, cliche.
I see that One-Eyed Willie from the Goonies designed all the death traps in this game.
Dartigan makes a pop culture reference that...
Ladder loading gate.
Well, what do you prefer? A standard loading screen that you'll probably complain about?
Then there is no pleasing you.
What's scarier than 5 empty wheelchairs in an asylum? 4 empty wheelchairs in an asylum. Because repetition creates horror, I guess.
Dartigan repeats a sin to pad his sin counter, cliche.
So your research partner is a psychopath. And we're all inside his head.
Since Ruvik is just a brain in a jar and this entire world is created inside his mind, that bears the question of how he manifested himself in the real world back at the asylum in order to kill everyone, and how he would hook 3 random police detectives up to his brain. If the pizza guy had showed up, would he be trapped in here too? And how did Ruvik hook up that one cop who drove the ambulance? The entire premise that this game revolves around doesn't make a lick of sense, and somehow I'm not surprised by that.
Joe, I can't muster up the energy to explain everything wrong with everything you just said. I'll let you handle this one, SC.
It is difficult to compute that this human has not considered the prospect that the opening of the evil within is essentially already occurring inside of STEM. That would explain why the city was unpopulated as the detectives were being driven to the asylum, which is something you acknowledged. All of the humans that create the cast of this story are already connected to STEM, and this is supported before Sebastian Castellanos confronts Ruben Victoriano in the climax. This also lends itself to how Ruben Victoriano manifested in the asylum to terminate those 3 police officers. It is a unique aspect of this game in that certain story details have more than one possible explanation. While this leads to comprehensible uncertainty and disapproval, this also lends itself to countless interpretations and interesting theories that fans can discuss and divide amongst themselves. Also, I must point out this incredibly noticeable error.
And how did Ruvik hook up that one cop who drove the ambulance? The entire premise that this game revolves around doesn't make a lick of...
As Omega would say, Dartigan doesn't follow his own script, cliche.
So a mansion in the middle of the forest with a front door that opens into a lobby with double staircases. The first door on the left leads to a dining hall, and not to mention horrific human experimentation went on here. Might as well have a dog jump through the window at this point. Shinji's eye is stuck in permanent nostalgia wink.
I think that's better than having a persistent penchant for thinking the director of this game referencing a really good game he directed before is somehow a flaw with this game. Seriously, dude. Your hate boner here is rivaling your hate boner towards Nero back in your Devil May Cry 4 video, another really awful installment I covered.
You're in here. I can hear you breathing.
Ruvik can't be much older than 30 in this game, but his childhood appears to have taken place during the 20s, judging from the clothes he and his sister wore, and the fact that they play in a barns like they're starring in Gone with the Wind.
You need to do more research for these videos. Like, seriously. Ruvik is older than 30 by the time he went missing in the real world, and you're foolishly judging the book by its cover. Just because they're dressed like a different time period doesn't mean the year reflects that. The reason they're dressed like this is because of the environment, namely the villages and rural communities outside of Crimson City. The reasoning was different, but this was also the case back in Resident Evil 4, another game that Shinji Mikami directed.
They must have been really proud of themselves for creating this annoying boss fight, since they make you fight her a second time. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting here questioning the odds of fighting her both times in places full of fire. The only thing that can hurt her.
I'll say it again. Yes, despite her annoying insta-kill grab that can catch you from like a mile away, this boss fight was awesome because it forces the player to use the environment in order to subdue her rather than a blunt and direct approach. And go ahead and question those odds all you f***ing want. You, especially since you complained about this boss, should not complain about having that one weakness available that helps you to defeat this boss in the first place, so cut the shit. Also, what was that?
The only thing that can hurt her.
Again.
The only thing that can hurt her.
Anyway, you don't proof listen to your recording lines, do you? You really couldn't record that again so it could sound better?
Elevator loading gates.
Oh, okay. So you're just repeating another sin that isn't really a sin and just swapping out one word to try and pass it off as something new. No. Dartigan repeats a sin to pad his sin counter cliche.
Leslie has been here before and made it back. He survived being linked to Ruvik.
For everyone expecting a detailed list of sins about the game's plot, I'm sorry to disappoint you. This game loves vagueness to the point that it doesn't even give you enough details to come up with your own conclusion.
That's a pretty eye-opening way of saying,
I barely have shit to say about what's actually wrong with this game, so I'll instead fill this video up with non-related observations and nitpicks that have possible reasons and actual valid explanations, as well as demonstrate an utter piss-poor understanding of game design.
I will explain what Dr. Jimenez was saying to my audience or anyone else who's interested. Leslie has been connected to STEM before as part of experiments carried out by Dr. Jimenez and Ruvik himself. The significance of that is that Leslie has survived due to the trauma he suffered when he was younger, while other patients used in these experiments were deemed incompatible or died as revealed in these notes. Dr. Jimenez is trying his damnedest to save his own ass at Leslie's expense.
He wants the same thing as us. He wants out!
Scientists have the worst flight or fight response whenever they come to some big realization.
This might not be the best way to say this, but f*** that. Dr. Jimenez rightfully had that coming to him, lack of reflexes or not. He was essentially responsible for the events of this game even happening, and that's not even mentioning the dozens of human patients he used as test subjects for STEM. I don't want to use materials from the DLCs that were released for this game to explain the story, because I believe that the main campaign of any game should tell its own complete story and not have to rely on DLC to fill in a lot of the blanks, which this game does, I'm afraid. But with this sin, I have to make the exception. So that you all really get an idea of how much of a fucking manipulative bastard this guy was, I'll play one of the tapes from one of the DLCs.
They're coming for me. I don't know how, but they know everything. They even know about Leslie. There's no use hiding this anymore. I'll enter the system and my return will be proof that all of this was worth it. I can of course convince them that it wasn't for me. It was for their goals. There are just the final tweaks left. Once I finish, I will put Leslie in the stem with myself and activate it. The wireless signal should ring out in the near distance. I can't speak for those unfortunate to be around, but like I always said, the ends will justify the means. Finally, Mobius will see that I am one of their chosen ones. Reuben is but a ghost. I am their savior. Their plan is nothing without me.
Reminds me of Quan Chi's death in Mortal Kombat X or the Burmese soldiers in Rambo. Extremely satisfying for villains to get a comeuppance.
What is this? Did you shoot me?
You started turning into a monster.
She shot Sebastian in the head, and not only is he still alive, but there isn't even a bullet wound. You have to at least give us some bullshit about the bullet only grazing them or bouncing off their skull.
Another instance of you having a clear path for a third strike pitch, and you instead throw the ball underhanded like the batter is a 2-year-old. Dartigan doesn't follow his own script, cliche. You had one job, dude.
Also, how many times does this make that a scene started with Sebastian waking up from unconsciousness? I haven't shown the other times this happened in this video, but I've counted 3 so far. Normally you should only start a scene with that once, so I'm going to start dinging it every time it happens from here on out.
It makes sense that it would happen on multiple occasions. You seem too dismissive of the fact that this is all happening in a collective dream world under the control of a psychopath. Also, Detective Castellanos literally awakened after a possession attempt by Ruvik. What would have been a better way to represent the detective retaking control of himself?
If you were in a room filled with this much flammable gas, you would die of asphyxiation in minutes.
I'm not an expert on flammable gases, and obviously it's impossible to guess all of the ways the detective is being affected by it, but I want to point out that even though you can visibly see the flammable gas here, it's not conclusive proof that despite Sebastian's presumed weaker lung power due to being a smoker, that he'll die fast due to asphyxiation. There are other factors that contribute, like how toxic the flammable gas is, how much breathable oxygen there is among the gas, and what type of flammable gas it is. A perfect comparison to debunk what you're saying is to use the section when you're confronted by the keeper in the catacombs. When you're in the catacombs, there's much more poisonous gas visible that's pumped out in a much smaller and contained space. This makes it much more difficult to breathe because there is less oxygen available. Comparing that to the section with the flammable gas, and there's good probability that the detective won't die quickly from asphyxiation. Look how high up this warehouse goes up to compared to the catacombs. The gas also doesn't come up very high to mess with breathing. Also, I found a small list of flammable gases, one of them being methane, and while looking up harmful effects to breathe it, I found this. I'll leave the link in my description as usual.
How did you get here? It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy is apparently an acceptable explanation for doing something impossible. How did you learn to fly? How did you learn to breathe in space? It wasn't easy.
So you just can't accept the fact that Joseph, an experienced police detective, was able to make it to this point? Sure, he's being vague about the details, but the point is he's here now, proving he's capable.
What I found. Seems to be in working condition. Go on ahead, I'll cover you. Find cover. They're shooting.
Headshot, bitch!
I have never in my life seen a school bus with this seating arrangement. Hell, I've never seen any bus with that seating arrangement. Look at all that wasted space down the center.
Seem to be moved around an awful lot. Almost as if by someone's will.
Yeah, his name's Shinji Mikami. That's just how he is.
This is a tricky one, and I couldn't find any info confirming this, but I don't think Shinji Mikami came up with the story of this game. He was the director, not the writer. The writing credits only list Itaru Yokoyama for the main campaign, with Trent Haga being involved in the writing for the DLCs of this game. Also, listen closely.
Seem to be moved around an awful lot. Almost as if by someone's will.
Yeah, his name's Shinji Mikami. That's just how he is. One bandage.
So no ding, even though you add a sin.
One bandage over a sniper rifle bullet wound, and you're as good as new.
For like the 40th fucking time I've said this line, that's not a sin of this game. This one is really a trope of video games that has existed for decades. I don't recall you complaining during Batman Arkham Asylum how Batman recovers his health by beating up Joker's henchmen and solving the Riddler's puzzles as opposed to getting actual medical attention. This blows my mind. You don't have much to actually criticize competently, so instead you try going after video game elements common since the 90s. What's next? That it's totally unrealistic Detective Castellanos finds ammunition for his weapons in the rotting corpses of the haunted? Ding. That the game shouldn't continue if you die during gameplay? Ding. That the
Omega will be implementing this for an undetermined measure by even my calculations. Perhaps it is adequate that we advance further.
Ding.
Nope, no way in hell you can survive a full-speed telekinetic-assisted crash through a building.
That Detective Castellanos hasn't eaten or drank since awakening in STEM, and he should really stop to get something to eat because that will inhibit his ability to operate at peak efficiency? Ding! Or how about that Sebastian shouldn't find syringes that refill his health after being bitten on the neck by a haunted? Ding! Oh, and if you want to talk injuries, I guess he should suffer third-degree burns when he catches fire, or when the detective gets
Human, your state of shock regarding these events I calculate should be immaterial when you replay the incident of the ambulance crash. All of those involved eluded termination then. Is it truly preposterous for it to occur once again? I must also broach the certitude that Ruben Victoriano enjoys torture. He possibly intentionally avoided terminating the detectives. Dartigan repeats a sin to pad his...
Hold on. I think I see another way down.
You saw another way around by looking into an empty elevator shaft? But then again, you already pointed out that you know you'll get teleported as the plot demands, so might as well sit back and wait for that, I guess.
2 observations. First, Joseph Oda was peering to his right when he stated to Sebastian Castellanos to hold on. Joseph Oda is looking at his partner when informing him about an alternate path. He is not observing an empty elevator shaft. And second, once again, Dartigan does not follow his own script, cliche.
Hold on. I think I see another way down.
You saw another way around by looking into an empty elevator shaft? But then again, you...
Let us report on Omega prior to advancing on this video.
Motherf... with... and stick it in your...
I may have to conclude this one.
It all ends where it began, cliche.
Cliches are tools used to construct a story. The baseless observation that a cliche is a cliche is very inadequate criticism. This topic of discussion was detailed expertly by BobVids in his Everything Wrong with Dartigan's The Last of Us video. There will be a link in the description of this video to it. And I must add,
it all ends where it began, cliche.
No sound effect once more for the addition of a sin.
I'm still waiting for an explanation as to how you appeared in the real world to kill those cops.
Direct your attention back to the previous explanation at this point.
All the power of a god in a world of his own creation, and he's stopped by an oil lamp.
Ruben Victoriano was traumatized by a fire in his youth. It caused the injuries his body suffers from, therefore, it makes an ideal purpose for fire to have this effect on him. For enthusiasts of film, this draws parallel to Freddy Krueger, who is also not fond of fire. For additional trivia, the English voice for Ruben Victoriano is performed by Jackie Earle Haley, who was the actor for Freddy Krueger in the film Nightmare on Elm Street from the year 2010.
I'm not doing the wheelchair joke again. By now everyone watching this should know Shinji's modus operandi.
I'm certain that Omega would greatly appreciate you not making a so-called jest that was not humorous to begin with. But now, I must ask the same question as well as the point before Omega went off on an intangible tirade. How is your observation a sin of the evil within?
I'm not doing the wheelchair joke again. By now everyone watching this should know Shinji's modus operandi.
If I make it out alive, I'm not.
Sebastian, listen to me. Stop. Your interests are the same as ours.
Look, I get it. You're not just some rookie detective, and this is not just some ordinary kid.
There damn well better be some DLC explaining why Kidman, well, pretty much everything Kidman has done or tried to do in this game, because they sure as hell didn't explain anything here. I get the feeling she's supposed to be the Ada Wong of this game.
I do comprehend the frustration of the plot holes in the evil within. However, one cannot look past this sentence fragment. A much more acceptable line would have been, there damn well better be some DLC explaining Kidman's motivations, because they sure as hell didn't explain anything here. In addition, Dartigan makes a video game reference that
I'm just going to take a sip of water for this next sin. I'm sure nothing stupid will happen in the next 5 seconds.
you are foolishly attempting to create logic about a video game taking place inside of a world with many consciousnesses and memories that shape this reality under the control of a psychopath.
Okay, if God is just going to side with you and just drop in whatever you need, why not ask for an Abrams tank or the BFG from Doom? Either would make just as much sense.
You are foolishly attempting to create logic about a video game taking.
Also, that's one last wink from Resident Evil.
I am beginning to understand Omega's frustration with the concept of references are not sins. Let's report on him once more before the conclusion of this installment.
One of the worst f***ing pieces of shit I've ever seen in my f***ing life, and I have no idea what the f***.
No further analysis.
Hey everyone, it's OmegaBlackHeart here again. As a precautionary, I recorded my outro first before any of my other voiceovers for this video, even though chronologically, it's the last thing you guys hear me saying before the video ends. I don't know, I just had a feeling to do this before debunking Dartigan's Evil Within video. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this installment. I've got another huge project planned in similar scale to my Spider-Man video for the foreseeable future that I will announce after my next video. And speaking of my next video, the preview of it is on my Instagram if you want to know what Dartigan video is next. Link for my Instagram is in my description. Catch you all later, stay safe everyone.